Good morning. It's 9:15. Today is March 28th, 2024. We're broadcasting from the St. Croix County Government Center County Boardroom, and this is the time and the place that have been published for the March board meeting of the St. Croix County Zoning Board of Adjustment. My name is Buck Malick. I'm the chair of the St. Croix County Zoning Board of Adjustment, and I am a resident of the town of Hudson in St. Croix County. I'll now ask the other members of the board to identify themselves and their place of residence, and ask the staff, people who plan to speak today, to also identify themselves and get the microphone check at the same time.
Dave Peterson, citizen member, town of Kinnickinnick.
Joe Miller, citizen member, town of Hammond.
Greg Teljohn, District 14 supervisor, Aaron Prairie, Richmond Township, and a little bit of Warren.
Dave Nickum, citizen member, town of Baldwin.
Jason Cheezit, community development director.
Mike Wozniak, land use administrator.
Board members, we have minutes of January 25, 2024 before us. Does anybody have edits or corrections to offer? Otherwise, we will deem them approved. Anything? All right, we'll deem them to be approved. I'll make a statement for the record that it is my belief, based on the paperwork I've seen, that this meeting was properly noticed and published in accordance with the state laws and the county ordinances that require publication of a notice of our meeting. If anybody in the room has reason to think there was any defect in the publication, please speak up now so that we can deal with that. Good. Never have noticed that, but we always ask, because it says in our bylaws that we will. We have 4 items of business to deal with today, I guess. 2 are about TW equities. The one's a carryover from previous meeting. I propose to handle them in the very same order that they were published. First the Glenridge properties and then the TW equities. Board members or staff, is there any reason to deviate from that? Good, go ahead. Whoever's making the presentation for Glenridge properties, please step up to the mic. While Mr. Cheezit is walking to the mic, let me announce to everybody else who's in the room that if you plan to speak today, please sign on that credenza over by the door. When you do that, you take an oath that your testimony will be the truth. And so by doing that in advance, you save us the time of having to administer an oath to you as you step to the microphone to speak. If right now you don't think you're going to speak, so you aren't signing right now, but you later change your mind, you can sign anytime before you step up to the mic. Mr. Cheezit, it's yours.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Our first application here today is for Glenridge Properties. It's located from 67th Avenue in the town of Roberts. It will be a future Lot 5 as part of a minor land division because of a certified survey map. The conditional use permit is to construct a duplex dwelling in the R2 zoning district, and the town of Warren does not require major plats, so that's why this one is before you. It's all part of a minor split of this property. There has been an updated map that we'll talk about later, but you all seen a very similar application a couple months ago. So if we look at the map here, there's lot 6 here in the corner, and the proposed duplex and the proposed lot 5 would be just to the west here, about right where my cursor is. So in the application submittal from February, there was a proposed shared driveway access coming from the existing Lot 6 duplex here over to the proposed Lot 5. In that building, the town has since provided us extra feedback that they would like a separate driveway to come out to the road by itself. So let me find that map. So the applicant has submitted us a new site plan. And on that new site plan, you can see the new building and the new layout for the driveway going in. The site has been soil tested for sanitary for the whole building. So there would be a total of 6 bedrooms in the proposed building. The driveway does cut through the drainage easement, so the drainage easement is kind of outlined by this dashed line going all the way around. And you'll see that the driveway just barely cuts through it right here. So there is the potential for some water flow, but not a ton because there's not a lot of drainage area coming through here. And of course, we wouldn't want our septic to be in a drainage easement either. So,
But there's no proposal to put a culvert there, I take it.
and that there is a proposal, and we would suggest an 18-inch culvert just because of, you know, trash and stuff and that. They like to silt in. We know that that would be more than adequate as far as capacity. Each of the applicant's units in the proposed building would be 1,167 square feet with 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a 2-car attached garage. So there's a couple building views on the front here. If you're interested at all for the floor plan, you can see they've got the 3 bedrooms identified kind of in the corners with a central common space with the kitchen. Here's a little bit better map of the area that would be Lot 5. So again, it'd be 8.06 acres total. So the drainage easement really is only on the remaining portion of the lot, not necessarily where they're planning on building down here. So this whole area here is all the drainage easement on the parcel. Some topography of the site. So then when we look at the ordinance, there is criteria that each conditional use permit application is supposed to comply with. And basically, what is the impact of the conditional use on the enjoyment and the value of the surrounding properties? We believe as staff that there is no impact, as the proposed duplex and that will have access to the new town road and existing utilities. What is the compatibility of this conditional use with the uses and character of the surrounding area? There are existing 2-family homes on lots northwest of this parcel, even on the north side of I-94, and there's a duplex right on the lot next door, which would be Lot 6. That you guys approved a few months ago. Is this conditional use permit consistent with the spirit and intent of the zoning ordinance? Because a duplex or 2-family dwelling is allowed in the R2, then as a conditional use, it is a permitted use if they meet the conditions for a conditional use, if that makes sense. There's no impact to public health, safety, or welfare, and the application does not constitute any nuisance and that would be different than having normal single-family households on the site. When we review the performance standards, we believe that they meet all the requirements. especially the 500 square feet, because the proposal is for the 1,167 square feet per unit. And that's really all we have, so. Any questions from the board?
Yeah, Jason, in that one photo you showed of the modified driveway,
Yep.
it looked like the corner of the building was fairly close to the property line. Are you confident that the building inspector that approves the foundation pour is going to make sure that that setback is met?
Are you talking right here?
Yeah.
And that is just close to the drainage easement. The lot line is actually way to the west. So if I pull back into the staff report right here, let me rotate this around.
Well, that's okay, as long as
So that corner that we're seeing is about where my mouse is right here. But the lot lines go all the way over here to the west. So this whole chunk, and that is the 8.06 acres for lot 5. So it is a little bit confusing that way. What that line is showing would be the east side of the existing drainage easement going through. So this whole area here is the part that would be the drainage easement. And it's got this kind of unique little fork that comes over here. That's where we're suggesting that culvert for the driveway, because you could get some water off from the road here potentially, and the ditch along the road could drain through the culvert.
okay, thanks.
To clarify my understanding, there is no, in the ordinance, there is no setback requirement from a drainage easement. A structure could be right up to the very edge of a drainage easement.
You are
and still
correct,
be
Mr.
legal.
Chair.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Good.
My compliments to the town board. Shared anything, as everyone in this room knows, can lead to trouble.
Is there anyone in the room who wants to speak to us, to the board, about this application? First of all, those who might want to speak in favor of our granting this conditional use along the lines that Mr. Cheezit has indicated. Then anybody who's opposed to our granting this conditional use along these lines. Neutral. Nobody feels a burning need to speak about this application. If we were to close the hearing right now and move ahead to a yay or nay type of thing, or discussion of any potential additional conditions, you'd all acquiesce in that. All right. Do you have additional conditions that the staff feels are needed or appropriate for this conditional use that haven't been already incorporated in the plans you presented, Mr. Cheezit?
We do, Mr. Chair. And Mike Wozniak here, our land use administrator, has hard copies if the board would like. But I'll go down through them here just to hit our findings of fact first. So, of course, on the top here, we got the applicant being Glen Ridge Properties. Glen Ridge Properties is really owned by Dick and Janet
Has the
Stout.
applicant seen this?
No, I can give them a copy.
Well, please
They're
do.
here, yeah.
If the applicant is here, we want them to see what the staff is giving us.
Sure.
Just in case, because we don't want any surprises here.
Yep. Yeah, right there would be Dick Stout. Okay, a minor land division has been submitted to the county to divide and create that lot 5 from the existing parcel. The applicant filed the CUP application for the duplex on February 5th of 2024 pursuant to section 15.515 and 15.550 of the St. Croix County Chapter 15 ordinance. The proposed two-family dwelling, and that will be on Lot 5, and Lot 5 will be 8.06 acres. The adjacent proposed Lot 6, and that contains one existing two-family dwelling or duplex. Future plans were submitted with this application to divide Lot 5 further once eligible through the minor land division process. So major plat is 5 lots in 5 years or more. A minor plat is 4 lots in 5 years or less. The town of Warren does not allow for majors. That's why this is a phased development approach. The property is zoned R2, which allows two-family dwellings or duplex by conditional use, as long as there's a minimum floor area of 500 square feet per dwelling. Two-family dwellings are subject to the setbacks in the R2 zoning district, and the dwelling proposed does meet those and is outside of the drainage easement. Two-family dwellings are required to meet the sanitary requirements of Chapter 12, and a soil test has been done, and there is enough room for a sanitary system for the total 6 bedrooms. We've already went through the ordinance provisions that the application must comply with in order for a conditional use to be granted. Any questions or additions to the findings of fact?
I think there would be one. Since we've had this modification to the original proposal to construct a driveway solely for the use of this property, and I think Mr. Nickum put it well, maybe a little too unnecessarily emphatically, but the provision of a single access driveway is a positive, is an improvement over the original proposal where there would have been a shared driveway with lot number 6. So we might say under 11, I'll just try some words and see if my board members agree.
Okay.
A separate driveway is good.
Okay, yep. So I added finding of fact number
That work
5
for
there,
the
lot
rest of you?
5.
Okay, good. And I see that, you know, as I skimmed ahead, it looked like on page 1, 2, 3 of what you gave us, it would be point number 6 deals with that individual driveway. So when we get to that one,
Okay,
I think I'll probably have some wording changes there also, where you require the 18-inch culvert.
okay.
And I take it, Mr. Stout, you're following along with us here, and that we're doing all right? Good. Proceed, Mr. Cheezit.
Okay, so if the board is fine with the findings and conclusions, then staff would suggest approval of this conditional use permit application to allow for a two-family dwelling to be constructed on the proposed lot 5 of the CSM map on the following conditions. One, that the one two-family dwelling can be built on this lot. The two-family dwelling is constructed per the plans filed with staff. The two-family dwelling is constructed per all of the applicable standards in Chapter 15 zoning ordinance. A building permit shall not be approved until the CSM map creating Lot 5 is done, so that we don't have 2 duplexes on the same Lot 6 currently. That the applicant files a sanitary permit that meets Chapter 12, provision number 6, and that if an individual driveway for Lot 5 is constructed through the drainage easement, at least an 18-inch culvert shall be installed with the driveway to not impede water flow. So I would assume that the board would want to take and make that more solid requirement. That
Yeah, why don't we change the if to since and the is to will be. Then it'll read, since an individual driveway for Lot 5 will be constructed through the drainage easement, and then everything else is the same.
Okay.
Agreeable, folks? Okay.
Okay. The applicant shall obtain all the permits from the town of Warren. and any other local, state, or federal permits and approvals, if there is any. The applicant shall have 1 year from the date of the above CSM map to receive the permit from the town of Warren. The construction of the two-family dwelling and final inspection completed by the county shall be completed prior to the expiration of the town's building permit. Any new owners of the property must adhere to the standards granted in this CUP. Sorry, this mouse is really touchy. And that the applicant agrees to these conditions by this Board of Adjustment action. And allows county staff to do inspections on site.
And then we would make the choice to approve with modifications, and we would eliminate the options of deferring action or denying.
Okay,
That would be one way to do it, and if so, you know, the hearing is closed and we've taken all the evidence, we've heard the proposal from the staff, and I think, board members, we could probably entertain a motion. Or if you have more discussion before the motion, either way.
I'll move we approve the conditional use as amended.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor should now vote aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. That's unanimously approved with those little wording changes there to catch up with reality, as it were. Thank you all. And in a few minutes, we'll take up the next matter. Yep. Go forth and do good. Evidently, there's a great need for more housing in our area, so. Yep, good.
yep, you bet.
So next up, we'll have a couple of conditional use permit requests, one for one lot and another one for another lot. And it has to do with the access to each of those two lots. This is a property that's in the Riverway district of the town of St. Joseph, so the Riverway overlay ordinance applies to it, complicating things a little bit, but making a requirement that we deal with disturbances that are within 40 feet of a bluff line. It's kind of the big overview there, as you all know from doing your homework, but just summarizing it for the viewing audience and the people who are reviewing this 100 years from now. You might be able to adjust that, well, the world would probably fall apart if you try to adjust that mouse sensitivity. So let's not go there. Is there a reason why we're not seeing the screen presented up here? Did the county board decide that they did not want to, Mr. Long and Mr. Witt to be able to see it right here? Or is it covered by, no, it's not. But we just don't have any visible screen on this side here. We got through the first one by, looking over there. Are the other three sides lit?
No.
Oh,
No, these two aren't.
I see.
Is there an individual button for the individual screen?
I touched the mouse.
Well, don't kick it, but you might want to cycle the switch on and off. Sometimes that it works for me. How about you, Mr. Telejohn, our computer expert?
Oh, sometimes you have to plug it in.
Oh, well, I see. Wow. Get a free technical education here just sitting at your elbow.
So I bring my own computer so I can see it.
I see, yeah. That's good. And how about you, Mr. Nickum? Are you doing okay looking over there, or are you looking at Mr. Telejohn's over his shoulder?
I have the advantage of looking over his shoulder, but I do watch the screen there too.
All right, yeah, okay. Well, I guess we'll just get along. Just, if if we ask you for clarification, it may be because we need a little help reading that screen on the wall. So here we go. Mr. Wozniak.
Yes, good morning. I will be running through the staff overview and also cover the findings of fact, draft findings of fact, conclusions of law, and staff recommendations for the two conditional use permits related to TW equities and property. And I'll note, I believe the first one is regarding the 6.4 acre lot that entails just a driveway request and associated erosion control and also stormwater management improvements.
No, this is lot number 2. The other one is lot number 1. And with the application for lot number 1, we've been given a proposed building layout.
Yes.
With lot 2, we have not been given a proposed building layout so far. To get it off my chest right away, I would like to state for the record that lot 2 looks like a very challenging lot to fit a house on. There's a small area there that is suitable within the 40-foot setback. And I do not want anybody to think that if I end up approving this driveway work, that somehow will be an approval to build the building outside of that setback. In other words, this is not going to be held against us in the future as, oh, you approved the driveway, therefore you got to approve this house, and we only need to encroach on the setback by 3 feet or whatever. I will not be misunderstood in that fashion to be suggesting that a relaxation of our normal standards would be inferred from the fact that we've approved a driveway. I hope I'm clear. And I got that off my chest. What you're giving us now, Mr. Wozniak, is the staff's proposals for lot number 1. And you're going to give that to the, or you already have given that to the applicant?
Already have given the document, which I handed out just so I didn't have to interrupt my overview. The findings, the draft findings of fact, conclusions of law, and recommended action from staff that the board may choose to take regarding this item. But let me continue with a brief overview. The first CUP being considered, I believe, is the CUP application 2024-003. This involves, again, lot 1.
Lot 2.
Lot 2, pardon me, a 6.4 acre lot in the town of St. Joseph. This is located in section 27, and it was recently, a recent CSM was done, which because it's in the Riverway, the subdivision did require action by the Board of Adjustment. So you have seen this property and are familiar with the lot configuration that was created. I would note that the conditional use permit that you're considering currently is required to allow filling and grading within 40 feet of a slope preservation zone, and the work being done within the 40 is stormwater improvement related, a sort of a bioretention rain garden type of feature, and a swale to convey water to it. But also the CUP is triggered because the work to extend the driveway through the property to where it terminates would involve filling grading for greater than 10,000 square feet outside of a slope preservation zone. So that's another trigger point for a conditional use permit requirement in the Riverway Overlay District. And just to put up a visual here of the lot. Essentially, if the board would recall, for lots 1 and 2, the access is coming through shared driveway situations, one to the north that would extend through an outlot, and see if I can get the full picture here. Part of it's already been constructed with a land use permit. However, because it's the driveway is work is exceeding 10,000 square feet, at this point it triggers a conditional use permit requirement, and so hence this is here for your consideration. This drawing indicates on lot 1 the proposed alignment of the driveway, and because direct access isn't allowed to Highway 35, the driveway does have to come through the side lot line. And I think that was clear when the subdivision was considered by the Board of Adjustment. And the reason I mention that is driveways are considered structures, and normally they have a 25-foot setback from a side property line. I would note that the original proposal for this conditional use permit application, and also for the next one for lot 2 that we'll get to, had driveway alignments that actually extended into the 25 feet and ran down the lot line, and they were adjusted. A revision was submitted based on staff's comments back to the applicant. And what they've done is the only place it has to go through that setback is where it's coming over from the outlot. And not much unlike when you extend a driveway from a public road, it has to go through the front yard setback if that occurs. Now, the other thing I would reference on this is there is a top of bluff and a top of slope preservation zone, if you want to think of it that way, and 40-foot setback lines flagged on this. The slope gets less than 12% as you're approaching the south lot line of the property, and hence that's where the applicant has chosen to propose the driveway, which extend down close to that 40-foot setback from the top of slope or top of bluff as it would drop down towards the St. Croix River.
Was it once thought that the access for lot 2 to the outlot would be shared with lot 1? The current proposal does not bring that driveway from lot 1 over to lot 2, so lot 2's access is back out to Highway 35 and up the road and turn in on the driveway that's shared by the outlot and lot 1.
As far as staff, I might just shut the door a little. We're getting a lot of hall noise here. If not entirely, maybe it could be partially closed. As far as staff understands and what we've seen, the intent was always to have 2 access points, each of them shared, one on the north side and one on the south side of the property. And so what's been submitted for consideration by the board is consistent with that. I don't think it was intended, unless the Mr. Zoller here is representing the applicant, would say otherwise. I believe this was always the intention.
Okay.
Pardon me, this mouse is very sensitive. I'm just going to run through the conditional use criteria and how this proposal matches up briefly. The request again is to construct a driveway from 132nd Ave. That's the access to the north to the proposed site. A portion of it is already constructed through the outlot, and it was done through a land use permit. However, this project, because it takes it over 10,000 square feet of area being disturbed, is subject to the CUP. As was pointed out when the Board of Adjustment considered the land division, the access to 132nd Ave is shared with 4 other properties. The driveway is within a heavily wooded area and is not visible from surrounding property. Actually, the subject property here, the outlot, Lot 1 and Lot 2, are also heavily wooded. There will be some clearing to allow for the development of the lots, but there is substantial tree cover that will remain between the right-of-way and the driveway location. The surrounding area is mostly developed for residential property use, and the proposed use for the property isn't any different and is compatible with surrounding use. Now we note that regarding consistency with the spirit and intent of the zoning district, the St. Joe, town of St. Joseph handles their general zoning, and the area is in an agriculture residential district per the town's zoning code. The Riverway District allows for residential uses and regulates the development of the property in the district, hence the permitting process you're going through today. The regarding any impacts on public health, safety, or welfare, the request we do not believe would impact public health, safety, and general welfare. The regulations of the code, the county's ordinances minimize any impacts. And I'd note also, let's see, pardon me. The regarding any potential nuisance concerns, dust, smoke, odor, the like, the best practices proposed with the application and what would be required with a subsequent land use permit requirement should mitigate any of those concerns. The primary concern with these riverway properties that slope down to the St. Croix River would be managing erosion and sedimentation and properly handling stormwater. We did call out the performance standards that the project is subject to, and there's a lot of detail here. I will highlight a couple things, but can answer questions that the Board of Adjustment may have or anything that might be generated if there's any public comment. Again, this particular project is just a driveway. There'll be subsequent permitting required for a future dwelling or any future structures that would either require depending on the amount of land disturbance, require a land use permit and or another conditional use permit. on this lot.
But is it clear to you that there is sufficient, and I think the technical term is net buildable area? Is there sufficient net buildable area remaining at the end of this proposed driveway for a home and all the normal accessory structures? Because there's plenty of room on Lot 1 on its eastern side.
Yeah.
Where a home and all kinds of accessory structures could be built.
What I would say to this is, it may depend what the landowner chooses to build.
No,
There's
I'm just
certainly-
talking
there's
about,
there was a lot area identified in the sufficient lot area in the subdivision process to build on, but whether what one could fit down close to the top of the bluff, which I think is what you're alluding to, Mr. Chair. The way the slope works there, the work that would be done to construct down in that area may extend, it may stay out of the 40-foot setback from the top of bluff, but it may extend within 40 feet from a toe of bluff. And that would be a conditional use permit trigger, which would require a proposal to come back before the Board of Adjustment.
but only for the rain garden.
What's that?
But that work at the toe of the slope would only be for the rain garden that's proposed on this,
Well, in this
Plan,
proposal, but I was
not
suggesting,
for the building.
if and when a dwelling is proposed,
Well, I'm not understanding your point.
There is a-
Why a building would be built more than 40 feet away from the home, from the top of the bluff.
the Riverway Overlay District requires a conditional use permit if someone is constructing, developing within 40 feet of a toe of slope.
Agreed, but why would anybody be building any
Let me just show the
structure
drawing and
around the toe?
I
when
can
the-
maybe clarify.
This goes back to my earlier point. There's no point in building a driveway out to this top of the hill if a house can't be built at the top of the hill. A house and all of its normal accessory structures, garage and a shed and the things that we see in a typical home.
There's an area that is at less than 12% where I'm extending my cursor. But then, at a point, you hit the toe of a slope where the top is up, again, where my cursor is showing on here now. And if somebody's wanting to build down here and they extend within 40 of the toe, it's not subject to a variance, but it is subject to a conditional use permit, and it would require, again, approval of this board.
Did you calculate the net buildable area out there?
That was provided with the subdivision. that
So
was
you
previously
do know
addressed.
what it is? Can you-
Yeah,
can-
I mean, I'm.
can you tell
pardon
us
me,
for the
I could
record?
Pull it up, I don't have it offhand. There's buildable area,
So,
net buildable area on the, what I would call the easterly part of the lot above the top of bluff, top of slope.
Of course
up in
there
this
is,
area.
but there'd be no point in putting this driveway out here if the buildings are going to be built on the east half of the lot. If they're going to be built to the east of the driveway.
Staff, has met with the applicant. We suggested it would be in their interest to propose the whole intent, including where a structure would go. They weren't ready to do so on this lot. Mr. Zoller, when you hear comments, may be able to better explain what their intentions are in terms of developing in the future. But this is what was proposed to the county at this time.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure it's worth our while going any further if we can't get a straight answer to that question.
So
But you probably have one, Mr. Cheeset.
well, I don't have the exact contiguous buildable area. That's the term that you're referring to. But right now, in our land division ordinance, a lot is required to have a half-acre contiguous buildable area. That contiguous buildable area is not including right-of-way, it's not including wetlands, it's not including steep slopes. It is only supposed to be the buildable area. Now, as far as what is contiguous, we don't have that currently defined in the ordinance. And so what is going on here is if there is contiguous buildable area, which it looks like there's easily a half acre, east of that second bluff line, but if there is buildable area that meets the definition of CBA going down below, and that would be allowed. And so when we look at the St. Croix Riverway provisions, the bluff line is defined as the top of the slope preservation zone. And so then we're like, okay, what does that mean? So then if we go to slope preservation zone, a slope preservation zone is an area that has 12% slopes or more. And so this site is unique because that second bluff line there is 12% slopes, and that between the flatter area down below and the top. But yet that 12% slope does not extend all the way to the south property line there, which is why, and that they're proposing to have a driveway come down, because we're not going through any slope preservation zone, and then we're still able to comply with the 40-foot bluff setback. But I think the area...
Well, I hear you.
Yeah,
and I have
is well
respect to
shown.
that, but you're going on and on about something that is not the point. The point is, will they be able to construct a normal-size house with garage and sheds, accessory structures, out there on the point that makes this driveway sensible? Or are we going to be approving a driveway to nowhere, as it would seem?
I don't think you have to build a structure down there in order to have a driveway. Maybe they have ADA family, or maybe they have the desire to get down to that portion for a campfire pit, and not a dwelling,
yeah,
so.
but, goodness, really? Do I feel one leg being pulled here? Why would somebody do all that grading work and then not come back 2 months later and say, oh yeah, we'd like to put a house here now that you've approved the driveway? We only need 2 variances.
Mr. Chair, if I could just comment. When we met with the applicant and their consultants, they talked about envisioning a smaller dwelling structure in the 1,000 to 2,000 square foot footprint range, and as opposed to some of the larger footprints we often see on some of these Riverway properties. But we don't have a plan in hand, as you are aware. So, and they're not required to submit that.
Nor
with
are
what
we
they're
required
requesting.
to approve a driveway to nowhere.
Understood, sir.
Am I off on the wrong foot here?
No.
Or do the rest of you share my skepticism?
But they're not applying for a house, they're applying for a driveway. We don't have a right to turn it down because they're building it to nowhere.
Would you agree then that if we approve the driveway to nowhere and they come back and ask for a house, but it
Well, that's a
only,
whole nother discussion.
that you would turn it down?
I don't know.
Or would you say, or
Well, I
or
don't know
your,
because I don't know the facts.
or your successor who says, well, previous board approved this
Well, that's
driveway,
up to the
they must have thought it would be okay for a house.
Well, that's not my thought.
Yeah, I'm
They're
thinking,
just they're
I'm
just
thinking,
applying for a driveway.
or are they manipulating us?
Well, ask them.
And,
Are you manipulating us?
If I could just to clarify, I didn't mean in that with my last comment to come off and that, but I mean, any development that would happen on this site You're very right, Mr. Chair, in that they would have to comply with the 40-foot bluff setback down below, and they would have to comply with the 40-foot toe setback for the other slope preservation zone above it. Now, if that means in that you end up with a very small structure, and that's what it means. If it means that you can't meet the ordinance requirements to build that building down there, and then they would be back before the board, and then the criteria has changed now to where now they might need another conditional use, or they might need another variance where they have to prove unnecessary hardship, physical property limitations, and that's not contrary to public interest. And so I would, as though it might seem odd, and that we really need to evaluate this application for whether or not it meets the conditional use criteria in the ordinance.
But you don't have any objection then to making a statement in the record that this does not imply that any future board will grant any variance pertaining to structures on this lot?
Absolutely. And that every application should stand on its own merits, and so, yeah, no problem there.
Okay. Proceed, Mr. Wozniak. I don't think there'll be any controversy from now on.
Okay. If it would serve best to expedite this, I pulled up the draft findings of fact, conclusions of law, and decision, or recommended staff action. I should qualify that. And I can run through this, and that might cut to the chase here on this item. In the findings of fact, we've indicated basically the factual information about the request, where the property is, the size, the location, that it's in the lower St. Croix Riverway Overlay District, and also the thresholds that require this conditional use permit, the activity within the 40 feet of slope preservation zone, which is again stormwater management related, a swale and a bioretention area to make for infiltration and slower release of runoff from the impervious surface created with the driveway installation. And I would note that there's also a couple thresholds that require a subsequent land use permit on this. One is that is when structures are being done in the riverway, there's a land use, and the driveway is considered an accessory structure under the way the county defines accessory structures. And also, land disturbance of 10,000 square feet or more within 1,000 feet of the ordinary high water mark triggers a shoreland ordinance requirement for a land use permit. So that's one more level. Now the applicant included, as I had mentioned, pretty detailed plans on the erosion and control and the stormwater management. And so I suspect it would be just reviewing that, but if any questions were to arise that would require a more scrutiny, the county could choose to have the land use permit reviewed by our Stantec, our stormwater consultant. I'm not necessarily anticipating that, but that's an option for us through the land use process.
Is this primarily sandy soil?
As far as I understand, yes, it is, and so it's not. They're also proposing.
So it's highly erodible.
Well, sure, and hence the erosion control and stormwater requirements.
We're still applying the 10-year storm requirement in our stormwater management calculations.
Correct.
We have not gotten more conservative in view of the heavier storm events that the area has been experiencing for the last decade. I will note for the record. So we're definitely not being conservative about protecting properties from erosion.
Mr. Chair, may I
So
jump
noted.
in? And that's the sense you bring up that point, and you brought up the point about the sandier soils and the potentially highly erodableness, and that it would be a suitable condition for the Board of Adjustment to require a greater storm event for the stormwater calculations, per se, like a 25-year storm, if the board was concerned about the erosion.
There is science to support that, isn't there? We've seen it in other cases, I think.
Well, that's one of the proposals in that we've gotten in a proposed amendment to the land division ordinance, because we are seeing bigger events spread out more on a regular basis. They're not a 25-year storm. I just wanted to make sure that the board was clear that that could be a condition that you could add to, offset some of the highly erodableness and the soil type out there. That's all. I just want to be sure.
Sure, we don't want to see somebody build a house and have it wash off down the hill.
We included in the findings the applicable ordinance provision standards, so that's, that the project is subject to, so that's part of the record, including filling and grading provisions. And again, I'd note that the area they're extending into the 40-foot setback from the top of the bluff triggers the, is a CUP threshold, as well as the fact that they're disturbing more than 10,000 square feet of site area, given the length of the driveway. It's kept in a fairly tight corridor, but also fairly long. These are not small lots. This particular lot, 6.4 acres. So, also,
where if we were going to put a 25-year calculation requirement, where would we put that? Somewhere in 7?
well, in terms of these standards, Jason was referring to the what we're doing with the land division ordinance. What I'm calling out here are provisions in the Riverway Overlay District regulations, and I think it's
With 7C, where it says meet or exceed, we would say meet or exceed a
You
25-year storm?
Yeah, you wouldn't actually put it into this. This is just in that the ordinance provisions as they exist currently. Where you would want to put it would be down on the conditions of the action. So down here as one of these conditions, that would be the appropriate spot that stormwater is designed, to meet a 25-year storm event. or something
probably, as
like
I
that.
cursor down here under the
Okay.
recommended action, probably number 2 that
Good.
you see.
Sure, when you get to it, that's fine.
Yeah, we can get to that. I just wanted to
Good.
briefly, let's see, briefly run through what we identified under conclusion of law. The criteria that the board has to use for conditional use permits in the Riverway Overlay District include the following. No grant of a conditional use shall violate spirit and general intent of the chapter. We note filling and grading are allowed by conditional use permit approval in the slope preservation area. Outside, it should be actually say outside the slope preservation area, and therefore do not violate spirit and intent of the ordinance. All of this work is outside the slope preservation zone proposed. And the intent is to construct a driveway and erosion control, stormwater management related improvements, which are allowed by land use permit. The trigger here with the CUP again is it's more than 10,000 square feet, and some work is being done within 40 feet of the top of bluff. In terms of consistency with not being contrary, I should say, to public health, safety, general welfare, the permit approval would not be contrary to public health or safety so long as the proposed stormwater and erosion control measures and standards are followed. And should you choose to require a stricter standard to be met and reference that in your action on this, then that would go even further to protect the public health and safety and general welfare in terms of any impacts from erosion and sedimentation caused by bigger storm events. The terms of any nuisance issues, the results of the proposed project, construction of the driveway, staff believe would not constitute a nuisance. And basically, in terms of applicable standards, all standards in the Riverway and Shoreland overlay districts shall be met, have to be met with this proposal. Again, back down to the staff recommended action after consideration of this item. I don't know if you would prefer I go through this now or wait till after any hearing comments that may come forth.
Let's hear from the others. Let's hear from Mr. Flannum and anybody else
Okay.
who wants to speak on this application. Are you signed in? I am. Okay, you are a registered professional engineer, if I remember right?
I am a land surveyor.
You're a land surveyor,
Land
not
surveyor, I'm not an engineer.
So you couldn't do the stormwater management plans yourself? You'd have
I
to
did not do them myself.
get somebody
Another-
else?
One of my associates.
Oh, there's somebody in your office?
Somebody in our office did this.
Good. So what's the plan for what goes at the end of this driveway?
So, to the best of my knowledge, there is no building plan at this time.
You mean there's no intent to put a house out there?
There's an intent to put something there, but not a house, a large home that I'm aware of, like you'll see on the next CUP where he's gonna actually build a nice, single-family home.
So
I
the
think
large home would go to the east of the driveway then? Between the driveway and Highway 35? I mean, you don't have a lot?
I don't know what he wants to build for a large home, if you even will build a large home out there on that property.
Or if he might sell it to somebody else who will say, gee, there's a driveway here, I guess we'll put a house there.
What he's asked me to do recently was to tell him how much land he's got down there on that lower portion to build on and fit within setbacks and whether, and I haven't done that yet. But I think his intention now is to build something more in the lines of a cabin or something to that effect, and not a year-round home.
Have you figured out if there's a half acre out there that's buildable?
There's probably not a half acre down, if you're saying just down on that portion.
Down at the end of the driveway.
Yeah, but again, I don't think that's a requirement. To my knowledge, to be able to build a home, I mean, the subdivision code requires a half acre contiguous buildable area, which this lot has.
Up on the top.
Up on the top.
Sure.
The subdivision code also alludes to having a area that can contain a home and a septic and a driveway for access to get to a buildable area, and again, this lot can have that. Now, how big of a home can you build down there? I haven't figured that out. But it's a usable piece of property.
In your opinion, does the code allow a cabin that is not that does not have sewer and water to be built on less than half an acre?
I guess I don't know the zoning code off the top of my head for St. Joseph. I believe that it would have to have sewer and water, but there is a perk test on this lot, right near the bluff line there,
Down on that,
down on that lower
at the end of
portion.
it perks all right?
Yes.
In fact, it's very sandy soil, but not,
It's not, I
Not
wouldn't
so
say
that
it's
it won't-
terrible
isn't
sandy,
good for
but
perk.
it's a lighter soil, yes. But it's, you know, it's got a good amount of topsoil on it, and it's heavily vegetated, so, you know, it's stable.
good, okay. You probably wanted to talk about something else, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to actually clarify what I know about the intent of the owner in building this driveway down there. I mean, he does want to be able to get to it, but what he's building, I don't know.
Have you started to think about where you would put a lift, you know, an electric motor lift to get from that point out there down to the water level?
They have mentioned to me the possibility of a lift, and that would be shared with these two lots. So it hasn't been identified where that would go, but
Oh, Mr. Nickum would say that's asking for trouble. That puts me in mind of other cases we've had with shared lifts. The friends didn't remain friends.
well, this is fortunately brothers, but that might be worse.
So, whatever. Is there some kind of a walking path now from out there on the point in the lower level down to the river?
No. What they use now is that outlot to the north that has a ravine that goes all the way down to the beach, and at the bottom of that ravine has always been a trail. It was been used by ATVs in the past, and definitely a foot trail.
Is it allowed to put an electric lift on an outlot, or does that count as a structure that would be prohibited?
Guess I don't know the answer to that, but I don't think the intent for them is to put a lift on the outlot. I think the lift will be up near,
Closer to the homes?
closer to the homes.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, structures that would require a sanitary system are not allowed on the outlots, but, you know, things like gazebos and possibly a lift or stairs that would not require a sanitary system, so may be allowed. As you're well aware, a lift or stairs would require a conditional use permit from this board.
Indeed. The rest of you? I've been dominating the conversation, sorry about that. Go ahead, fire away.
Well, I certainly support your thoughts on possibility of building a house, but the thought of a lift never occurred to me. You know, I could see wanting a driveway to get your stuff down to the lift. But like I say, just basis for a driveway, I don't see where we've got anything that building a driveway to nowhere is going to be preventable at this point.
I like the thought that we need to specify that this is not in any way to be construed as approval for any size structure in that lower area, unless it comes into conformance with all regulations.
You know, I could see the development of this property with a really big house up there on the top and a gazebo out on the point, kind of the sort of thing that would make use of such a valuable lot without requiring variances. Yeah. Any other thoughts or observations there?
That's all I have, unless you have specific
Yes.
questions.
Yes, I don't make the connection, Mr. Chairman, you're the attorney, but I don't make the connection of this driveway authorizing a house. And I know we can play games with the law, I understand that, but it seems to me when that happens, that'll be a new ballgame when they decide to, apart from the driveway. But what am I missing?
Oh, yes, I don't think you're missing anything, Mr. Nickum, but I'm reminded of the logging road that became a driveway that we dealt with just last month and a couple of months before that. How do you avoid having a slope on a road, a driveway, that is more than 12% in grade? You have to make it longer, right? You have to stretch it out over a longer point. Well, when they were doing logging, they didn't stretch it out to keep the slope under 12%. After they got done with the logging, they said, well, here it is, and it seems to work, so let us call it a driveway now. And so where we, at the very beginning, had they come in with a driveway application and said, we want to go through slopes that are steeper than so-and-so, and we want to have our logging road be, or our driveway be more than the fraction, we'd have said no, or our predecessors would have said, no, we don't do driveways that way. We've got a set of standards, the highway department has told us what they think they ought to be, and we follow it. But they did it as a logging road, and then it became a driveway. That's why I am sensitized to the concept that a future board might look at this and say, well, gee, there's a driveway out to that, so why shouldn't there be a house? You know, and give them variances. But I'm content, assuming that they can deal with a 25-year storm in their water management for a sensitive site like this, to just make a statement in our formal record that says no approval is to be implied from the fact that we've approved a driveway. That is the law. Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to straddle a fence here and get everything right all at the same time. Mr. Flannum, you're not the guy who did the calculations, but but given the fact that there's so much erodible slope on this property, if the rest of the board feels like a 25-year storm ought to be the calculation used for the rain garden and for the other surface water management structures, culverts and drainage easements and ditches and all that kind of stuff that's associated with it. Do you have a sense right now whether that can be made to work?
I guess I don't know, but I don't know why it wouldn't be able to. That I would just assume that pond that was designed would just get a little bit larger.
It's certainly deeper, perhaps also larger in its, which would, as you know, Mr. Wozniak's been talking about, do more having to do with the toe of the slope and such like that.
So there's kind of a, if you're looking at that picture, there's kind of a ravine area that joins, we'll say, the larger ravine that goes directly down to the river. And so this pond, as it was designed, is at the top of that ravine to control the stormwater that's going to ultimately go down that ravine, or does now even. So, not being an engineer, but I don't know why it wouldn't be able to go in that same area, just would have to be sized differently.
Yeah. I suppose there'd be more of the rock riprap over a greater extent for the overflow area on the pond, and so there'd be more rock to be put in place. Yeah. So the cost would go up naturally. But, you know, we're talking about a pretty important thing here, stabilizing everything.
Yes.
Okay, anything else? Nope. Did anybody else in the room want to speak to this application? For or against or neutral or whatever? Were there some more things you wanted to say, Mr. Wozniak? Or I suppose you want to work our way through the so-called conditions now, huh?
Yes,
I'm getting the sense from the board here that everybody's going to want to approve this. We just want to get it right, and we may tweak some words here and there. Yeah. So we have a sense of the board to move forward.
did you wish to close the hearing, Mr. Chair?
I always hate to do it because I think, oh golly, somebody might ask a question and
Okay.
then we could use it, but I think formally speaking, we need to. So it's 10:31 and we'll declare the hearing closed at 10:31. So now we won't be able to take any more evidence. We'll have to work with what we've got.
What I would say with these conditions that had been drafted, these 7 conditions, number 1 and number 2 should probably reflect that you're asking for the plans to be modified to meet the 25-year storm management of stormwater. So that would entail some different filling and grading than what the submitted site plan has identified. I think those changes can be made as part of the land use permit process if the Board of Adjustment is comfortable with that.
Sure.
And-
So we could like add a sentence to 2 that would say the 25-year standard shall be applied.
Right.
25-year standard shall be applied. 25-year storm, I guess that's what you call it, right?
Submitted.
Good. It more or less catch everybody's approval on that? Okay. And then that would be a sentence added to number 2. And then there'd be a new number 8, I think, right? That would say something like approval does not imply that variances will be granted in the future. It's just a statement of the law, but re-emphasizing for everybody, approval shall not imply granting future variances for structures.
Jason, are you making note of those changes? Very good.
I can repeat it back to the board if you'd like.
Please do. Yeah, that's great.
Okay, so on number 2, we would add the stormwater calculations shall be for a 25-year stormwater event. And then number 8, and that approval of this conditional use permit does not ensure or guarantee any variances or building on that lower level.
Variances for building.
For building, okay.
Yeah, you're right. Just put an F in front of the word for, or. Yeah, all right. Are we getting pretty close to a decision here with ayes and nays? Any more topics that people needed to know? Okay. So we probably have a motion lurking here to approve this particular conditional use permit with the modified conditions and findings that we've just been talking about. Is that what somebody's about to say?
I make a motion that we approve this conditional use permit.
I'll second that.
Okay, it comes from Mr. Nickum and the second from Mr. Telejohn. And we probably discussed it enough, so all in favor, vote aye. Aye. And opposed, nay. And that's unanimous. All right, good. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Wozniak. Thank you, Mr. Flannum. I think you've got a sense of where we're all going here. Now we have another one, and this is for the lot right next to it, and it's nice new house. And this one, I doubt will be controversial at all, but that's just one guy talking.
I'm going to take just a moment and hand you out that draft findings, conclusions of law and decision, recommended decision.
You have it right there in your hand, I can do the distribution, and then you can keep talking. Because we have people waiting to hear about the Baldwin Airport. Very good, thank you. Have you already given one, Mr. Clown?
Yes, I have.
Outstanding. And you have your own, Jason? Go ahead, Mike.
Very good. This request, conditional use permit from TW Equities is similar in the sense that the ordinance issues you're considering are filling and grading 10,000 square feet or more, and also filling and grading within the 40-foot setback from the top of bluff. Again, also for stormwater-related improvements and some general site grading as well on that. This lot is 4.3 acres. Again, it's under the ag residential zoning for the town of St. Joe, and the access for the property comes in from the south, shared through a driveway easement, sharing a driveway access with property located to the south to Highway 35, and I would note in the submittal, it identified a bluff line and a 40-foot setback from the top of bluff or top of slope. This is a unusual lot in the sense that there was a fixed property line that's an angled property line, so it actually touches the right-of-way of Highway 35 just at a point. But again, as I'll show you here, the driveway access is coming through that shared easement and extending down to provide access to a proposed dwelling located further west on the lot and outside of the 40-foot minimum 40 setback, but within the 100-foot from the top of the slope. And you can see on this drawing there's a sanitary system that is proposed to be developed, would be subject to a sanitary permit through the county, and again a stormwater feature here as well near the top of the bluff.
Is there any reason we shouldn't apply the 25-year storm standard to this stormwater management system also?
I would think you'd have the same concerns, Mr. Chair, on this, especially since you're seeing more impervious surface, but that's up to the direction of the board.
Thank you.
Just a little more detailed look that includes proposed erosion sediment control measures, and you can get a clear indication of what is happening with grading. Now, the other issue that comes into play when we're considering structures that would be meeting the 40-foot setback from the top of bluff, but within the 100 is will they be visually inconspicuous? And the application did include a sort of cross-section analysis that the board has seen many of these previously that indicates from the ordinary high and from the 250 feet out, what would be visually conspicuous, anything above this angled line, essentially. Now, the sketch of the dwelling, maybe it's not completely designed yet. It honestly, it doesn't really show a roof line. The roof line could not exceed that height of that line or 35 feet, the maximum height to the highest peak within the riverway. A more detailed look at that would be expected with the land use permit application. That would be a requirement. We've kind of gone through this on a couple projects where the applicant knows the maximum height that they can meet, but they haven't necessarily shown us a house design that specifically shows what the highest roof peak would be. You may recall, Board of Adjustment members, we dealt with a accessory building proposal down in the south part of Troy not too long ago that we had that same sort of scenario. The maximum height the roof could go to was identified, but we didn't at the time of CUP consideration have a detailed building plan that showed how high they were going.
Well, this looks like it would go from 875 to 910, which is 35 feet,
Yes.
and not reach the sight line over that bluff.
Yeah,
Yep.
it appears that it will work, yes.
I suppose that'll be a question on that other lot, too.
Yes, it will.
For another day.
Correct.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, absolutely.
The wooded, is this a wooded lot?
Yes, they are heavily wooded.
So there has to be a lot of trees cut down to plant this house.
And driveway.
And a lot of those trees are going to be along this bluff line?
You can see the proposed contours. You can see where the sanitary system is proposed, where the stormwater feature is proposed, and where these solid lines are extended, where grading would occur. And so to work those areas, the existing trees would have to go. There is a minor clearing that aligns somewhat with where the house would be sited or where the sanitary would be sited. Now the bluff itself, below the top of the bluff, is also heavily wooded with substantial trees on it. But yes, this cannot be constructed without taking out a fair number of trees, because the site's essentially completely wooded and a good mix of species on it as well.
Please proceed.
Yes. The same performance standards this is subject to as the prior request, so I won't run through those unless you have any questions. I think you've already addressed the issue of what level of stormwater management the plan should be required to design to, and if you wish to go to the 25-year, then I think you would adjust the conditions accordingly. I think the primary difference in the consideration is obviously it's more impervious surface or site impact, because this proposal is showing the home, the driveway, the home, the sanitary system, and the stormwater feature. And
Any more questions for Mr.
Yeah, if there's any
Wozniak
more,
about this one?
I'll pull up that findings document so that it's available, and you obviously can open the hearing and see if Mr. Zoller would have any additional remarks on it.
Yep. Anybody in the room want to speak about this application? Gee, I called you Ed Flannum, didn't
Yeah, I was
I'm sorry
gonna
about
correct
that.
you, but,
He works
What's the
with
name?
your firm, but in another office, right?
well, Ed is now county surveyor in Polk County, so.
Oh, indeed.
Yeah.
Ah. Okay, well, you're Doug Zoller.
I am
for
Doug
the-
Zoller.
For the record, yeah.
So I just clarify a couple of things I think that might help. The house sight line plan, we have a complete set of plans with elevations, and so when we did that sight line exhibit, we were trying to show the house as the grading plan, so we kind of know what elevation that house is going to be at, and you'll notice that it's not right up at the 40-foot setback, and the reason for that is we couldn't fit the roof under the sight line until we pushed it back. So it is moved back from the 40-foot setback some for that reason. And I guess the other comment that I would make regarding the view of it, there is large trees on this property, and then there's a whole, even though we need to clear some for the driveway and the septic and the home, keep in mind that from the bluff line riverward is a slope preservation zone, and that is heavily regulated for cutting trees, so anything on those slopes, that's a different set of regulations. Those won't be cut. And then with regards to the stormwater, I do know that it was challenging to create what he did with the stormwater on this one. So addressing a greater storm event might be quite a challenge, and it may end up worse than what it is right now as far as what has to happen. Again, not being an engineer and not studying what the difference between those thresholds are, I don't know. But I do know that it was challenging to fit just what he did with this design. By he, I mean the engineer.
Sure. I think we take your meaning.
So-
I know that there's quite a bit of land to the east of the building that is presumably planned for lawn and park-like appearance between the highway and the building. That could be smaller rain gardens to catch the difference,
There is an additional storm pond up there.
Yep, right up by the highway.
Right
I
up
see.
by the highway to capture some of that that's gonna come off the driveway and highway up there.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll get captured before it gets to the house site.
So there'll be plenty of trees left that hide this house? In your
Definitely,
view? In your
definitely
view?
along the bluff line and then down to the river. Most people are gonna be very selective as to what they cut. We have the home staked out on the site for that reason, so that they can determine what trees need to go and which can stay.
Let me explain about this profile on page 70. That is drawn considering the lines of the ground, not the trees. So any screening that the trees provide is in addition. So that line shows that the peak of the house, the highest point of the house, would not be visible because of ground that intervenes in the sightline. So anything that comes from trees is just frosting on the cake kind of thing. This is hidden by the hill, essentially, and that's what the law requires. I mean, we all know that things like oak wilt come along and wipe out the oak trees, and the box elder bugs wipe out those bugs, those trees, and the ash borer gets the ashes, and so the trees that are here today aren't necessarily the trees that are here in 5 years. So that's why the law is constructed to depend on the ground, providing the screening. Did I get it right?
You got it
Mr.
exactly
Zoller?
right.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions for Doug? Nope. Any other points you want to make before we take your point that dealing with 25-year storm, it will be more work for the engineer, and it'll require dedicating more land to water management. But once again, we don't want to be responsible for your client's house sliding down the slope or any other untoward events. All right, that said, I think I could close the hearing. It looks like, are there any other points you wanted to get in on the record from a factual standpoint, Mr. Wozniak?
I don't think so.
Okay, I wasn't expecting any.
I would just say, be cognizant in giving direction on wording if you do wish the 25-year storm event to be planned for.
Sure, Mr. Cheezick, can we use the same language you used on the last one?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, okay. Board members, with that one change, would you be willing to approve this?
I'll make a motion to approve this with that minor change.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Telejohn and Mr. Miller. Further discussion? Okay, we make up a little time on this one. All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Unanimously approved. Good. Okay, thanks everybody for the cooperation and help on two somewhat challenging matters. Now we have a deal with regard to the Baldwin, airport thing, but I think we ought to take a 5-minute break. My bladder would like that. And do you want to make a statement for the record?
I'm going to recuse myself from this hearing, and I'm going to leave the room so hand signals will not be able to be interpreted as a deciding factor.
All right, and I understand that is because you're a member of the town board of the town of Hammond, and this property is located in Hammond, and Hammond has taken a position with regard to the way this ought to be approved.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so the clock on the wall says 10:53. How about 10:58 to resume? so I can't call on him to take over for me.
Certainly.
All right, I see it's now 11:01, so let's resume our meeting here now. We got one more matter to deal with, and it looks like you're planning to lead off, Mr. Wozniak. You've got a couple of exhibits that were on the table here. Did you label them internally so we what they are?
I had just received them in the last day or two here, and I did not, so I suppose we need to do that.
And were they provided to the world at large?
They were,
the great,
they came to me by email.
and so did you post them on our website as additions to the record?
They are not posted on the
They're
website.
not up there yet.
I can certainly summarize them.
Yeah, you'll have to.
In my
I guess I
comments.
have this feeling that a part of our process is that if people are looking at things in advance using our county portal, that this should provide them an opportunity to know as much as possible in advance. These people, of course, know what they sent in. It's just that maybe nobody else knows what was said. So I guess as a general matter, we've usually used a kind of philosophy of trying to put on the website whatever we have, if we have time to get it up there before the meeting starts, so that somebody who, there might be somebody out there who, I don't know, is opposed to the Helgesons, and would, if they knew the Helgesons had sent a letter like this, they'd show up and say, don't believe the Helgesons. We'll make do with what we got. Did you figure out some numbers or letters to use to identify these, Mr. Wozniak?
We can use 4A and 4B.
Which is which, please? Which one is what? The Huftel or the Helgeson? All right, I'll make a,
The Helgeson one is 4A and the other one is 4B.
okay,
And the reason why it's number 4 is because it's business item number 4 on our agenda.
fair enough. Any system will work. I mean, we're thinking about reviewing courts in the future and so on like that. All right, go ahead. As I remember this, we deferred this to today's date because we had some questions, and quite frankly, we're hoping that the neighboring parties could kind of get together and reach some sort of agreement that would be helpful. Go ahead, Mr. Wozniak.
I'll try to just summarize this briefly and touch on a few of the issues that were brought up at the January 25th Board of Adjustment meeting. The request applied for as conditional use permit application 2023-025 from the Baldwin Airport Properties is to approve a campground that for 47 campsites and that is serves the Baldwin Airport property and their skydiving operation. And I'd note that there's 34, there's a couple parcels that are part of this. The campground itself is on a 34-acre parcel. The total holdings total 53 acres of contiguous land that the airport properties have. It's in an R2 zone, which the campground would be a conditional use in that zone district. Concerns were raised by the town, or recommendations really submitted by the town of Hammond that were part of the packet, and they were incorporated into the what was provided to the Board of Adjustment in the way of findings, draft findings, conclusions of law, and staff recommendation back in January. And I'll get to that part. We've reiterated those requirements, but let me talk more generally on this. Some of the concerns identified by the town involved emergency vehicle access, being able to respond to the campground if there's a health emergency or fire or storm damage, that sort of thing. And so the concerns entailed having sufficient spacing between the aisles of campers, and also, and might be useful if I cursor down to a site plan that was submitted as part of this. If I can find that. Well, I think I passed it. Here we go. And so the concerns of the town included having all the units, they wanted to have all the units licensed and roadworthy, be on wheels so that they could be moved, and eliminate any accessory structures, and include a 20-foot drive aisle up the middle aisle so that there would be sufficient room for a fire apparatus to negotiate if there were an emergency event. I'll note I have had some discussion with Mr. McCauley, and when you take comment from Mr. McCauley, he has had discussions with the fire department, and I believe we'll propose a solution that would incorporate a gravel drive aisle around the perimeter of the campsite area to meet fire department concerns. So I won't go into that further, but I know there's been some dialogue that's occurred on that. Another issue that the town had is that they did not want the board to allow the 5 campsites that tend to be used on a more interim basis, as Mr. McCauley had previously indicated in January. The town did not want to see those sites that are down closer to County Road J, and so the recommendation staff has drafted, at least at this point, incorporates that preference of the town and would not allow for those sites. Mr. McCauley did show sufficient site area for required parking, and so I don't believe that is an issue. The issues brought up by the neighbors, however, included some nuisance types of issues and concerns, including occasional use of a shooting range or shooting activity on the property. Also, some using or discharging of fireworks, and some later night noise from campers. What you will see when I get to the staff proposed recommendations on this would address some of those issues, really all of them, including the establishment of quiet hours. We're suggesting a 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And also restricting the commercial shooting ranges are not allowed in the R2 district, so I'll make that clear, but as part of the CUP to restrict the discharging of firearms by campers or guests. And a couple other issues that were brought up as well were junk items located in the north of the property. Staff have been working with Mr. McCauley to resolve those, although we had not established a clear timetable. We will suggest end of June date to bring that junk issue into conformance. And there was another issue that was raised by the town and by property owners. I believe some of the correspondence included with the email communication from the Helgesons were regarded the shoreland area. There's an intermittent stream that runs kind of north-south through the property. And there was some vegetation cut there by Mr. McCauley, and some piles of cut trees or brush stacked. And I'm not sure if those have been addressed yet. The intent was to burn them or remove them. We're also indicating in a proposed recommendation that be addressed by the end of June of this year. The other issue that I'd flag, I think, that was noted by the town and also by staff in the initial consideration of this would be the sufficiency and condition of the sanitary system to serve the larger campground operation. We have a proposed condition that would require that the applicant hire a licensed plumber to evaluate the system for capacity and condition in terms of conformance with code requirements, and get that done by again, June 28th is the date we're suggesting. We don't necessarily have reason to believe that there are any problems or issues with the system, but it was constructed in the mid-1990s, and if you're willing to approve a larger campground operation, it should be evaluated. I will pull up that findings, conclusions of law, and recommendations document just so it's available, and you may wish to take public comment or either hear from Mr. McCauley or ask him questions about how he's planning to address some of the concerns that were raised on the first part of the hearing on January 25th. I would note the hearing was left open, so you can take further comment when you're ready to do so.
Do you have a print copy of your staff proposal for us?
Well, let me.
That's a definite maybe, huh?
I do not. We could print copies readily if you wish them.
Well, show it on the screen. Let's see if we can read it.
Okay.
Have you provided it to anybody else yet?
Well, it's been available, the staff report's been available on the website, and actually, are you talking about the findings document?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, pardon me.
I don't.
That I do have.
Oh, good. Okay, because I don't see it in my packet here.
Didn't realize I hadn't distributed it.
I don't see that the applicants have it.
I did.
You got it?
Yes. I'm good.
No, I just wanted to make sure you had it, Mr. McCauley. Because when we ask you to step up here, we'll want you to comment on it, probably. In fact, you probably won't need any encouragement. You'll probably want to comment on it. So I think then, Mr. Wozniak, that concludes your presentation for now, doesn't it?
It does, and after you've heard any comment or had any questions you may have answered, I can pull up the proposed, staff proposed conditions for your discussion.
Yep, right. All right, those who want to speak in favor of this conditional use permit application for 47 spaces, and I assume that would be the owner of the property, among others.
Yes, good morning. So yeah, we'd gone over some of this stuff and been talking to Paul Berg, the Hammond Town Board Chairman. And I guess I'd first like to address the emergency access. You know, he went out and looked at it, his fire chief went out and looked at the site, and we both come to an agreement that actually a gravel driveway around the perimeter is probably better than trying to run a 20-foot gap through the middle, which isn't impossible, but really still kind of constricts the fire engines, you know, to drive in there. So it's much easier for them to get around the side. So I think that recommendation or that solution works for both of us, and we're willing to do that.
Is that 20 feet of gravel all the way around?
We didn't really discuss it. I think it'd be the same width as our regular driveway. But yes, we could make it 20 feet. I'm sure it would be probably larger than that, but.
Because probably you're going to make it wider so that your clients can actually park on the edges of it, right?
Well, sort of, not really. We don't normally, on the north side, yeah, they'd be parking, but we don't really want them to park on the west side. So what we're trying to make that driveway is essentially for the emergency vehicles. So if we put a bunch of cars parked all around it, it'd make it more difficult, so.
I got it, yeah. But the emergency vehicles don't need 20 feet wide, do they? Wouldn't they? That would work with 16 feet or so.
Yeah, I hadn't really gone into how wide they need the driveway. The original 20-foot was between trailers, so I'm
yes,
sure the driveway.
I understand, but I'm just trying to. Let's not be putting down a lot of gravel and paying a lot of money for things that we don't need, and that tends to become impervious surface, which then creates a surface water runoff problem. Isn't 12 feet the width that we require for private driveways for purposes of, in this county, for purposes of emergency vehicles?
Correct.
Is
You
there
know,
a
for,
reason?
for some commercial uses, it greater can be required, but that's the minimum certainly for residential.
Yeah, so I guess we'd be likely to be saying not less than 12 would, you know, if we're going to use previous standards for similar situations. You can make it as wide as you want, except if you get wider and wider and wider, then we may have to think about stormwater management with swales and culverts and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, 12, minimum of 12 works for me.
At least 12, okay. All right, proceed to your next point, please.
Just pretty much going down the list here. They had minimum 10 feet between trailers. It's already there. No parking on the access roads. All the trailers will be mobile. The no campsites along County Road J. We had talked about making them possibly just weekends or holidays, and I mentioned that to Mr. Berg, and he didn't have a problem with that, but I don't think we came to an actual, they're going to send a new letter thing. So I don't know how to. So that's basically the people those aren't campers that come and stay for a little extended period. You know, we'll have people that'll, you know, drive in for an event or to spend the weekend there, and that's, you know, their easiest access, and then leave immediately, versus in the past there had been some trailers that spent considerable time there.
So you're thinking that the town chair is agreeable to having those 5 sites along County J only on weekends and holidays?
Yeah. So it's not a permanent campsite.
Got it. Okay.
I'm completely agreeable to the campground quiet time between 10 and 6. That's, seems very reasonable. And the same with 2 days before and after 4th of July fireworks. I mean, that's pretty much what we've done in the past. Occasionally there'd been excess that had gone off the weekend after that, you know. As far as the...
You have a sense you'll be able to enforce these things?
Yeah, we've got I've designated an on-site manager that's our he doesn't live there, but he's pretty much spends most of his time there. And plus I'm there practically every day too,
But you commute from Menominee, if I remember right.
correct, yes.
Okay.
But during the summertime, you know, our groundskeeper, essentially maintenance guy, he's there almost every evening. He lives in Woodbury, but during the summertime, he's there pretty much every day. So.
Now, if he gets run over by a beer truck and cannot perform that function, do you have some reasonable assurance that you'll be able to replace him, or is this, you know, he's your son-in-law, so he has to do it kind of thing, in which there's only one person in this universe who could fill that role, and if he can't fill it, now we've got a big problem?
No, not at all. Actually, there's another woman who's his sidekick, and they're pretty much, she lives in Baldwin, and they're there
All right.
every day, pretty much all winter too. They're working,
Okay.
cleaning things up. As far as getting all the junk cleared up by June 28th, not a problem. We talked about that before. There's not a ton left, and some of the buildings have been emptied out, and it can, you know, most of the junk can be. Let me cut to the chase. Sure, I can do that by June 28th. Get that cleaned up.
Do we agree on what is junk, though? My wife and I can never agree. We've had a couple of notorious cases in this county, which are going back and forth to the circuit court. Mike, what working definition are you using, or do you use photographs?
We have a very specific definition in our Chapter 15, our zoning ordinance, for what constitutes junk, and
Have you shared it with Mr. McCauley?
yes, we've had that. We've been on site. We've kind of walked the area where the materials are. We can do a follow-up communication in writing on that to be very clear. But basically, there's a limit of, but items can be put inside a building, and that's allowable. But if it's outside, there's a limit of only 600 square feet, and it must be buffered or screened. And so it's, the ordinance is very specific on that and what items. If a vehicle is licensed or operable, it can be stored and isn't considered junk.
Both? Either licensed or operable?
Correct.
All right.
And I would use the example, there are many farms that have vehicles that are not driven on the road, but are operable.
Sure.
And that's part of the basis for that kind of thinking.
Well, anyway, your proposal is to refer to section 15.353 for a definition.
Correct, yes.
And that seems to work for you, Mr. McCauley.
Yep, that works just fine.
Okay, let's continue.
On the vegetation and debris pile, we were actually planning on burning it this next week. We were going to burn it earlier this winter, but we didn't have any snow, and then all of a sudden there was burn bans on. But I think now after this latest snow event, this is a good opportunity to get that before the grass grows back up and gets. And I had been in contact with the Baldwin Fire Department, and they basically said, just give us a call so we don't have the townsfolk calling for a huge fire, but we can take care of that by the proposed date.
Okay.
Don't have a problem with having a plumber come out and take a look at the sewage treatment. It's been serviced every year and has been working adequately.
Do you care to address the shooting range?
Oh, yeah. I basically, you know, we don't really shoot that often, and I don't know if you remember that someone had a complaint there. We actually had found that the communication we had from the neighbor was at for 7:30 p.m. in July, so it wasn't a real late night thing. What do you really mean? I mean, where is it? I'm trying to find it here. Oh, no shooting by campers or guests, but family members and employees are. I mean, we don't shoot very often there, really. That's kind of a phase that's passed, and the guys who were into shooting are no longer there. I don't think I've shot there in 10 years, so.
Well, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea of a shooting range, and that maybe that language sort of comes up in some of the neighbors' comments, is that people, the public, can pay and then have a right to discharge their firearms. We don't want to see that. That's on one extreme of things that this is not going to be a license for. We don't have the authority to grant that kind of approval. On the other extreme is landowners discharging firearms at their own property, and all they have to do is keep it safe and keep it within the boundaries of their property. And then civil liability takes over if they go beyond that, I guess. What do we want where in that spectrum in between do we want to end up? We certainly want to restrict the hours, and our quiet hours would seem to apply here. We don't want anything that in your publicity implies that people who pay the camping fee or who somehow are granted access to the flying facility, flying and parachuting, then also acquire a right to discharge firearms on your property. It's not a part of a business type of activity, I guess. We don't want to see that, right? And you don't, that's not a part of your business.
Yeah.
Not part of your business plan.
Yeah, you don't get a skydive and a shooting session.
Right. And shooting from the air into a moving target or none of that. Yeah. So I guess if we say no discharge of firearms by campers or guests, and that leaves open the whole campers or guests. That leaves employees, owners, their families, and I presume that's going to be acceptable as long as it's within the hours and all projectiles stay within the property, of course. Go ahead, I'm just trying to put up something for people to comment on. Can that be improved? Okay, you'll have some comments, will you, later? Good, we'll hold your comment and bring it up at the right point. And we'll maybe be able to fine tune this in an acceptable way. So that's, I guess, anything else, Mr. McCauley, about shooting? Point number 3 there?
No.
Okay, any other points you wanted to make? As I understand it, you could live with a grant of 47 sites, 5 of which can only be used on holidays and weekends, the ones out on County J.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would work for you.
Yeah, that's even less than we've had for the last few years before this was brought to our attention. So, but still, we've gotten rid of some of the trailers and some of the people that don't use them anymore. So we can definitely live with that.
I mean, it goes without saying that nobody gets to stay there 12 months of the year.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, this is not a residential facility. Yeah. All right. And did your right-hand woman there want to speak also? Your left-hand woman?
You mean the boss?
Yeah, I mean the boss, yeah. Okay. All right, sort of the category of people who are in opposition, I guess the Helgesons. Did you want to speak? Are you the Helgesons or are you the Hoftels? Helgesons, yes, yes. Okay. I see Kathleen Helgeson approaching the microphone. Are you in a position to kind of focus on this possible actions to be taken document and
Yes, I
kind of use that as our working document to improve upon?
That's helpful, thank you, yes.
Great, okay.
So a few things that come to mind as I'm reading through this and listening to Mr. McCauley. I'm not so sure that the issue about the campsites that are right on Highway J, truly, if it was just holidays or it was just weekends, we could talk about that. We could think about that a little bit more. Our experience with Twin City Airport and or Skydive Twin City is that one thing is promised and all the lines are blurred from there. And that is our experience. For instance, they have been permitted 17 campers and are just now asking for an increase to 42. And yet for several years, I was shocked when I heard that they were only permitted for 17 because for years there's been twice and 3 times that. And it's been an eyesore that frankly became more of an eyesore when they chopped down all those trees and the barrier, site barrier between the 700 block of 200th Street and the airport. It's like, wow, we have this decimated, and plus now we get to really see what's going on over there, behind the lines there, and it looks terrible.
So if the 5 sites along County J can only be occupied on holidays and weekends, and they're easily viewable by the county deputy sheriffs. So enforcement of they're either there or they're not there is a very straightforward thing. That works for you, I take it.
Give me a minute, okay?
Well,
I'm just saying, I can come back to it before I'm done. Honestly, I would prefer not.
Oh, I understand. You'd prefer probably that there be nothing there, but I've got to kind of...
trees and flowers would be good.
Yeah. All right, let's get back on task here.
Yeah.
So do you care at all about 1A, whether the gravel is around the outside or down the middle?
No, I would leave that to the professionals, those who know.
And 1B, same thing, and obviously C, no parking on the emergency access. Currently, everything's got to be registered in the future. Again, easy to determine. The deputy sheriff sitting out there on County J pulls out his binoculars and he looks. Is our license plate? Does it have a sticker on it? Wheels on in case of emergency. Tent sites, count up to 42. If there's a tent in addition to the 42, now we got 43, so we're in violation. Pretty easy to enforce. No, nothing along J as we've discussed, except weekends and holidays. Now there's not any plan for water, sewer, electricity hookup. There's not going to be any water or sewer hookups, and electricity is just straightforward. They have those, 42 of them. The plumber's going to check out the septic system. That's covered down in number 8 also.
Right.
No permanent residencies, so nobody gets to stay there year-round.
So I understand that, again, Mr. McCauley reported last time that there aren't any permanent residences, and yet there are 2 right now.
And that would not be allowed in the future. They'd have to leave for some time every year.
And you can understand, though, my hesitancy or our hesitancy as the, residents across the road, that if he says one thing, that he's going to
Oh,
follow through.
I hear you. Yeah,
Okay.
I do. I wasn't here in '94 on this board, although I came shortly after, but I was not involved in the initial decision to grant it for 17. And so I have no idea how it got from 17 to 50.
Yeah, it's quite a mystery, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes people buy property and they don't inquire what requirements there are and what restrictions. And realtors tend not to talk about that either. So we got that. So, this, in 1994, they didn't think about things like that. Now we do. The quiet hours, 10 to 6. I take it you can live with that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You probably wouldn't want more restrictions than that placed on your own property.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the 10 to 6. And, to be really transparent, we don't have any issue with their business. It's loud, it's kind of invasive as far as, noise pollution goes. There's extra traffic, things like that. We're not really taking issue with that.
Understood.
We
Understood.
can be good neighbors about it. It's not a problem. And so 10 to 6, that seems reasonable. Although when you're talking about enforcing 10 to 6 on the shooting range, no, 10 o'clock at night? No, that's dark. That's too dark. And 6 o'clock in the morning, that's loud. So I'm always very unsettled about that shooting range. That, a lot of us walk on that road, and we have, there's little children. And I just think, well, we can say you have some kind of parameter here and you need to be really careful, or if it's then it's a civic matter, and go, well, yeah, and it could be, a matter of a lot worse than that. I don't like that so close to residents at all.
I know, but of course your neighbor on the other side could be firing a gun at any time of the day, 24/7.
And yet they're not. They have respect.
Not yet.
They have respect for where we live and who lives by us, and their neighbors.
I hear you. So on the fireworks, those
Yeah.
5 days we got there.
Yep, that's fine.
That works. The junk?
Yeah, again,
Yep.
so are boats considered junk?
Nope.
Right. So are they part of this? You can have 6 of them? Or ATVs, wood piles, is that junk? Or is that something that needs to be put in a shed? Because, if there's several items that are considered not junk, but they're junky and they're sitting out, that's exactly what we're talking about.
Mike, does the ordinance deal with the number of boats or the size of a wood pile?
It does not. If a boat was sitting there with the bottom a hole in the bottom, and it's not functional, it couldn't be used, it would be considered junk. If it's if it's operable, just like motor vehicles, if they're operable, if they can start and move, then it would be allowed.
Is that the same standard that applies to every residence?
Correct.
I mean, are the Helgesons
Correct.
Limited in the same way? They can't have a boat there with a hole in the bottom of it? Or a car that the engine won't start?
Correct.
So, okay, it's the same standard then.
And, but for 600 square feet that would be screened.
Ah, yes, there's always that.
Yeah. Believe me, it's not an easy standard to administer, and we get a lot of complaints, and we follow up on a lot of them.
Yeah.
Well,
So that's likely to be always something of a bone of contention in this county and most everywhere. Junk is often in the eye of the beholder, just as it is between my wife and me.
Well, it is a matter of concern for the neighbors and thinking
Yep.
about how to enforce, even, again, if it's cleaned up to acceptable standards by the ordinances or the regulations, and then that line is blurred.
Supposing that, one of the things we occasionally, but very rarely do, but we occasionally schedule a follow-up before this board. Supposing we were to, and I'm asking you, Mike, and you, Jason, suppose we were to put this on our calendar for our July meeting for a progress review. I mean, these things should all have been done by June 28th, or the ones we've been talking about here. And that actually would kind of force you guys to be out there on July 1st, well, no, not on the weekend, but before our July meeting, and to give us a staff report, pictures if appropriate, of what you found. We don't do this often because we don't get any more money, to pay the staff to cover. They've got other work to be doing, but maybe the board would be interested in that kind of follow-up.
We can definitely provide that, Mr. Chair, if you and the board would like to see a progress update.
So I'd offer you that as something that we could do, just a little kind of like peer pressure type of thing.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
That would also apply to the vegetative cuttings business in number 6, wouldn't it? Although you may also get some help from the highway department and from the town board if anything has to do with vegetation, plugging the culverts or
Right.
the like. Their eyes would be on that too.
I am wondering if, I heard Mr. McCauley mention that he's been talking to the fire department. They're going to do a planned burn. Are they planning to do that for the whole line, the whole half mile that was decimated, or just one particular area?
Okay, I'll ask him back to the microphone in a few minutes and we'll get an answer
Okay.
to that.
Yeah, that'd be good to know.
Yep. Well, that kind of takes us through that document, I guess. Number 8 talks about having the plumber out there to make sure that that is all work. And then of course, number 9 is the campground stuff. Those people will, our county staff for that, a different staff will check on that. Applies to new owners. Number 12 says that county staff can go on the property anytime to inspect to make sure that our conditions are being followed. The old one didn't have that.
I
Back in
appreciate that, too.
1994, we didn't used to have a sense that we might, and so there was a kind of a perception that the county staff didn't have the authority to go on a property and make sure things are copacetic, that they'd need to get a warrant or something like that. Nowadays, when the applicant accepts our conditional use permits, they're giving a permission during reasonable hours to be inspected.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It would be important for us as residents in that area to know who we report to, who enforces, and who we might keep informed about concerns that we have in the future. Hopefully we have none.
Yes,
Really,
indeed.
and we're all for it, having none, and remaining good neighbors who care about the business as well as our residences. It's just gone too far and too long.
Sure it has, sure. Well, you'll keep Mr. Wozniak's phone number in your records, and even if he's run over by the proverbial beer truck, it'll be the same phone number for his successor. There'll always be your town chairman, of course, and whoever is the incumbent at the time. Both of those are appropriate. And in this case, once we get this in place, you can always also call the county sheriff's office.
Okay.
I would recommend that you make a note of the non-emergency number, because the 911 people maybe would say, this is a civil matter, and it might not get processed to the right people. So use that non-emergency number
Okay.
for the sheriff's office,
Thank you.
and they can get out there. Of course, if it is an emergency, then you do use 911. Let's see, was there something we were going to come back to here?
How I personally feel about those campers and tents next to Jay. Yeah, and I personally don't love it, and yet I defer, I guess, to what seems the best recommendation by the town of Hammond.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
For your
Thank
input.
you so much for your attention.
I'd like to ask you a question. You mentioned about boats. This is that little pond. They have boats in this pond?
There's no pond. It's a part of a pile of stuff that's in the back of the property. So it would be across from Jerry Thompson as he looks
Okay.
out toward the east, and Paul Heftel. That's their view right there.
And there's a four-wheeler back there just sitting?
There's many different things back there. There's, I think, some of their supplies for maybe fixing things. It's very junky looking, and so also, I'm noting Mr. McCauley's boat is not in his yard. It's actually in front of ours. And so I'm just wondering, okay, well, if boats are allowable, how many boats are allowable? If ATVs are allowable, how many? Because I'm remembering that he was permitted 17 campers, and we have 2 and 3 times that.
So are these items you believe belong to the campers?
I think they belong to Mr. McCauley.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for your input. Mr. McCauley, could we had this question about the burning. Are you going to, when you do your burn, are you going to take care of all the vegetation that was cut?
Right now, there are 3 major piles that they put in all the slash in, and our plan is to burn those. I'll try to get as much of the rest of it to burn as possible, because what our plan is to, the vegetation now is already growing up very quickly on both sides, and I'm on the east side. I want to keep that as low as possible. So we'll try and burn as much of it as we can, but the slash, the cuttings are concentrated in 3 big piles, and that's going to be our main focus. And we have actually walked the entire prick line and cleaned out every stick out of there. So, because I know there's been a case a year or so ago that there was a major flood event, and some of the debris became a problem. So we've taken care of that. But we want to get all the stuff. The 3 main piles are going to be burned.
I assume you're referring to that letter from the town and another one from the highway department where they sent you an $1,100 bill for vegetation that washed into the culverts and caused water to flow over the roads and do damage.
11,000.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
$11,000. It's much easier to be proactive about that.
One, as long as I'm here, one other thing, there was, as far as the trailers being mobile and licensed, I also, when I was talking to Paul Berg and the fire chief, their main focus on the trailers was that they're movable in an emergency. He didn't seem to care if they were legal to go down the highway, but if there was a fire event or something, that they could actually get pulled out of there, and we'd take care of that.
So supposing that we were to modify that, it's 1D, it says current license registration required for each unit. Suppose we were to say, unless written approval received from fire chief and town chair for exceptions.
Sure.
You think that's what they agreed to anyway?
Yeah.
So you just get that confirmed in writing and we'll be golden.
Mr. Chair, I just note that we haven't received anything in writing about the town being okay with the 5 sites up front along County J either. You know, that was,
No, I agree with you. We haven't. They say no, the town's position is they do not approve those 5. So if we approve them, we'll be not following the town's suggestion. Okay. And I've been doing all the talking. It may be that my peers here are gonna say no to those 5 and follow the town's exception and not say what I've been suggesting, that it would be okay to use those 5, but only for holidays and weekends.
I have a question for Mr. Wozniak. Will these campsites be notified to public health so they know how many are going to be permitted?
yes, we, our community development staff meet on a monthly basis with virtually on a Microsoft Teams meeting with public health staff and to discuss matters like this. We, of course, can communicate with them separately than that, but we do that for those kinds of communications. And, you know, they have their categories of permitting. Usually there's a 0 to 50 for licensing.
It's $298 for the license.
Yeah.
For up to 50 campsites.
Yeah. There's overlap in the concerns the county has versus, you know, the community development versus public health. And, you know, water and sufficient water and sanitary and the spacing. They're essentially administering DSPS regulations.
Right, Department of Agriculture.
Yeah.
Oh, does this lead to something in our conditions?
No, I just wanted to make sure there is a mechanism of communication so the licensing is correct. That public health is what is charging them with.
What we're trying to avoid, honestly, is we've had issues where we haven't been on the same page with some of these private campgrounds where public health has adjusted the licensing, the number of units, and the zoning hasn't been changed to allow for that. So we're trying to stay aligned so they understand if they're asked to allow 75 sites with their licensing or something more than what is approved by zoning, that they need to ask some questions of our community development staff.
That brings up a question to me. Normally, our conditional use permits are recorded in the land records. Would this be? And the way it works is that we just make a copy of it and attach the page to it, and walk it across the hall to the land records office and record it in the record for this particular property identifier. Is that what happens here?
We can file it with the Register of Deeds. It hasn't really been past practice to do that, but it can be.
I think we should do that. I mean, I just think that is one of the best practices that we have developed as a board over the last couple of decades, in part so that people, when they're buying a property, can know what they're getting into, because there's an easy place to find it. It's in the land records. It's the same place that's going to be searched for the mortgages and the deeds, you know. And for neighbors who wonder, are there any restrictions on my neighbor? Well, let's go down to the county land office, or now you can do it online, of course, and let's see what's there under that property. I think it promotes compliance, it promotes informed decision-making, and is a good practice.
Not to get off on a tangent, but another thing that's beneficial to the public. We're now linking through our GIS system. You can click on a parcel and you can see the documents that are on record, and so it's more accessible.
That's what I was talking about.
Yes.
I use it or used to use it in my law practice, and now I use it just in incidental ways. But It's, I think, a great value. The realtors forced us to go to that and to set up such a system 20 years ago. And we started charging everybody a higher recording fee to pay for it. And so it's in place and we just need to use it. Now, I think, if I'm right, and we've got 4 minutes to get this done before noon, we've got a few edits to make to the possible actions. I don't know, have you been keeping up, Jason, as we've been working through here or not? Okay, do you think you've got them? If so, just, are you modifying the document up there, or no? You're doing it?
I'm not
a
modifying the
separate thing.
document there because he's got it open up there, so then I can't open it
Yeah,
here.
all
So the drive lane going around the existing campsites, we've got as a minimum of 12 feet wide,
Gravelled?
gravelled, yep.
Yep.
Okay, and then the 5 campers along County Road J are only to be there on weekends and holidays.
Yep.
Quiet hours shall be from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Fireworks shall only be allowed in that 2 days before
Yep.
the 4th of July and 2 days after the 4th of July. So there would be essentially a 5-day period there where the fireworks could be lit off, and those would comply with the quiet hours as well.
Everything else is as you've typed it, with one exception, I believe, and that's 1D. I think our very recent discussion said 1D would have a phrase added to it. So it would read, current license registration required for each unit except for written approvals for exceptions from town and fire.
Correct. Yep,
Yep.
that was my
right.
next one.
So it would be expected that they'd have a license and it would be current unless, and, you get letters. You might get a blanket exception from the town and the fire chief that say, no, none of them need to have licenses. Or you might get something that says only these particular units are exceptions. Whatever it is, you'll get it. And you'll naturally have to provide a copy of it to the zoning office.
Clarification on those 5 units on J, there's no electricity, no sewer there, right?
Right.
It's just a
There's,
parking spot, essentially.
yeah, there's no sewer or water at any campsite in this property. There's electricity where the 42 go.
If-
Well, and the 5, probably. Are you
If-
gonna electrify them?
No, there's no electricity.
Okay, so there's only electricity north of the buildings.
If those 5 sites were to be allowed, that limit to 42 would be bumped to 47.
Yep, 42 plus 5 conditional, as just mentioned. So it's a total of 47, but 5 of them can only be occupied on weekends and holidays. I think that covers everything. Now, we got, the fire thing, but that, and the junk thing by June 20. Oh, we gotta have our special meeting, our follow-up meeting at our July board meeting to review progress.
And could we make sure there's pictures of everything?
All right, to that meeting, bring pictures. Yeah, hold it, Jason, we don't have Jason's attention right now. When he gets finished with what he's doing, then we'll talk in his
Yeah.
other ear.
Just want to take and clarify in that it would be the town of Hammond. There's
Sure.
a town of Baldwin
Yeah,
notice there, and so that would be the
Pardon me,
town
Hammond.
of Hammond.
Yeah,
Yep.
I've got Baldwin Airport on my mind.
yeah.
You don't want to shortchange the lovely town of Hammond.
Yeah, and the fire department is whatever fire department serves that location. Baldwin United? Okay, in order, Greg, you had a point, and then Dave? Or were you satisfied?
Just make sure there's pictures on the follow-up.
When you bring this to us in July, can we see some as-built, as we call them, or after-the-fact pictures? And Dave?
I was just wondering, they cut the trees down because of safety, and safety is important. That's most important. Is there any way that they could put a barrier up there? Or isn't that possible?
You mean, so the parachutists don't fall into
In
the
front of those
trees?
houses to hide some of the things
Oh,
going
a
on?
visual barrier.
Yeah. Is that possible?
Not really, the houses are kind of up on a hill, so the barrier would have to be 60 feet high, and
Okay,
it would be the same wind turbulence we're seeing.
Yeah.
okay, that's fair enough.
Potentially, you could put a hedge close enough to the campers that you would provide something, but if you're gonna put a drive aisle for the emergency vehicles, it might interfere with that.
Yeah, and again, it might create crosswind issues, turbulence. Yes, Mrs. Helgeson.
So, to be clear, the, what happened when the trees came down, when they brought down all those trees, is that it was left looking like a bomb went off. And it looked like there was a war zone, and it has been left in that condition. If it was park-like, as Mr. McCauley said last time that we were here, that he wanted to make it like a park, that would be perfect. That instead of all this junk and all the scrub and all, it looks still like somebody came in exactly like they did with big equipment, chopped it up, and left it. And that's the view for us. And so it isn't, so that, in that act, then their whole business was exposed to us. And we could see, well, my goodness, there's a lot of campers there. And it looks pretty bad over there. And there's junk piles all over. And by taking that barrier down, they exposed themselves for what they were doing there. And not that we couldn't have seen it, we just didn't notice it because it wasn't in our front yard. Now it is. And so, our appeal to at least clean it up isn't to say we can't see it. It's not that. It's that it looks terrible. That's all. Really.
Yeah, and you make a good point that I don't think has come up before, but I can imagine we have if we think about this for a minute, we might have a solution to a potential problem. It's been 30 years since this board last looked at this property and granted a permit in 94. It may be another 20 years and those trees have grown up again and it's time to cut them down. Can we put some language in here that will apply 20 years from now? And I'm thinking of the analogy to our riverway, where the rule there basically is no vegetation may be cut if it is greater in diameter at breast height than 4 inches unless it is diseased or dead. That's my summary. Why not a rule like
Aren't the
that
trees
here?
cut down because of safety for the crosswinds and all that?
Exactly.
So,
So we just need a plan when 20 years from now, they need to cut again. We need to know that it's going to be cut and then it's going to be removed, or it's going to be cut and it's going to be mulched, or it's going to be whatever it's going to be. And you won't be here, I won't be here, but what we decide today will be here.
Generally, in shoreland areas, the vegetation is regulated within the vegetative buffer area, 35 feet either side. And, there's supposed to be permanent cover, and, if it's existing, with a canopy, mid-story, and ground cover, you're supposed to maintain that, although you can have viewing corridors. Outside of that 35 feet either side, unless it was an erosion issue, it's not really regulated.
35 feet on either side will work. It's from the bank, is it?
Well,
The ordinary
if
height?
there's a established bank, sometimes if it's an intermittent, you go from the center line because it's not very clear.
So could we, I mean, doesn't it make sense, Jason, to put another bullet point in here and reference the shoreland vegetation management standards that apply within 35 feet?
You can. You can't prohibit them from having their allowed viewing corridor of up to 35%, but beyond the allowed viewing corridor in NR 115 and Wisconsin Statute 59692, you can require them to establish a vegetative buffer for the 35 feet on each side of the creek from the ordinary high.
So, for instance, we have some language that says future tree cutting within the shoreland buffer will be governed by the county ordinance at the time. Something like that. It's just that when people look this up in the land records, they see there's something that needs to be done.
Yep. And they should be doing that anyway.
They
That
should
would
be.
be what we'd want. I mean, we want to permit that stuff on the front end, so
But-
that would be all
but who
permitted.
looks?
But, you know,
Okay, so that'll be number 13. Vegetation management, tree cutting. We know in this case that trees cannot be tolerated for safety reasons above a certain height. And so the fact that they will be cut is perfectly foreseeable. We just want to have it done right and have them removed and not have road washouts and big bills again, okay?
I just add to that generally, property owners, we expect them to consult with the county, but they generally can remove invasive species.
Certainly.
Buckthorn, sometimes there's undesirable species, but they're not necessarily considered invasive. But if it's invasive, generally you want that stuff out of there.
Yeah, although we may be getting into a real rabbit hole here because certain species of the popples that clone themselves are considered invasive, but they're okay as long as they don't get too high. All right, we got a placeholder at least for something you'll put in there, Jason, that cross-references that. All right, you have something else, Mrs. Helgeson?
I'm so sorry, if you could please clarify for me, did we land on the side of that there's going to be room for campers? There's an extra 5 more campsites that will be, that's where we landed, even though the town of Hammond recommended not.
I don't know, the rest of you thinking you're gonna stick at 42 flat?
No, I guess I don't
I
see a
think
real
those
problem.
5 are all right. I understand what's being said here, but the town of Hammond, I understand the town of Hammond made that rule because of the way it looked. They thought it looked better without those campers, but I think if I'm going to come there and jump out of an airplane for just one weekend, and I wanted to bring a little camper along to get away during the day, what does that hurt?
I'm willing to leave the 5 there by Jay right now and see how the new plan works.
Yeah, okay, so that's where we're coming out on that.
And then the shooting range, what did we decide on that about?
It's limited, just like it says in here. It's limited to family owners and employees, not campers or guests.
And then a shorter window than the quiet hours?
Nope, still 10 to 6. Just like the fireworks.
6 to 10. So at 10 o'clock at night, they can still be shooting? Or-
They have to stop at 10 p.m.
Right, so.
Mr. Chair, if I could provide some guidance, that the way the provision is worded there in number 3, and that's preventing any campers from doing it on their property. and that any private landowner can go out and shoot firearms at any time of the night on their own property, and that because it's gonna be them, so only, so that's what this says.
Yeah, yeah. No campers or guests shooting at any time. Yeah. Well, it's at 12:11. I'm leaning in the direction of closing the hearing. Would take no more testimony. And we'll move forward based on what we've heard and the drafts we've been working on and make a decision on this today. So, 12:11, hearing's closed. All right, board members, what is your pleasure? Do you want Jason to kind of summarize again where we are, or do you have it in your minds?
I have in my mind that we approve this
We'll
conditional
always-
use permit what is it? Variance?
It's a conditional use permit.
Permit.
No
With the
variances.
changes noted with Jason. Yes, I make a motion to approve it.
I'll second it.
And we're going to look at this again at our July meeting, or if some reason we don't have a July meeting, if there's no business, then August, yeah. And when you do bring it back, staff would like to see pictures to show the way it's looking after the cleanup, and which is, of course, by June 28th.
Mr. Chair, for all the items, since there has been some changes, we'll get decision documents prepared probably tomorrow and have you contacted when they are.
Yep, when I come in to sign it, send it to me in advance. And
Will
I'll
do.
Proofread it. Be more efficient that way. You have your light on, Mr. Nickum? Is there a,
Yes, I'd like to say that I understand Mrs. Helgeson's point about their track record is not good. But it's been a good business for the village of Baldwin and for St. Croix County. It's brought entertainment, and I think for the most part it's been a positive thing. But it's important that they follow the rules, and I totally understand her point.
yeah, I don't think she'd disagree with you. You know, that's my interpretation. Everybody sees the positives. And, you know, in defense of the Macaulays, maybe they didn't know what they were getting into when they bought it, and assumed that what was there was permitted. We'll never know in this life. But there'll be an accounting later, I gather.
I just say, you know, there's responsibility to go around. I mean, I've been with the county 4 years, Jason since August. Obviously, we weren't here a lot of the time. This wasn't in compliance, but, you know, if we have these permits, we have to keep tabs on them, and if they change significantly, you know, there's a role for the county as a regulator as well to point these things out. You know, it wasn't complained about and it wasn't checked on for a long time, and I think we kind of will accept it. We need to do a little better than that.
So I guess there's blame to go all the way around, huh? Now, let's see, we got a motion, we just need to vote on it, huh? All in favor, vote aye. Aye. Those opposed, vote nay. Unanimous vote. Okay, that concludes our business for today. Thanks, everybody, for your help. I know not everybody's happy, that's the way it always is. What do we have to talk about for the future, Mr. Kaseth? Do we have a
Yeah, I just
meeting
got
coming
two
up?
announcements, and that we're gonna be publishing an ad to try to recruit some BOA alternate members, so that you guys know. Or if you have any ideas or suggestions for some alternate members, that would be good. Currently, we do not have any alternates. And then you will also notice that there will be an ordinance amendment webpage put on the county's website. Right now, the ordinance that'll be out there will be the land division ordinance, hopefully in the next few days. That has not went to public hearing yet. That won't be until May. And then the date of our next meeting will be Wednesday, April 24th, 2024 at 8:30 in the morning, because the county board will be having the committee of the whole meeting on our normal Thursday meeting, the 25th. So the 24th, the Wednesday, will be our next meeting. That's all I've got, Mr. Chair.
Yep,
Yeah, because of
we were preempted by the county board wanting to use this
committee
room.
of the whole, that's where they spend more of our money and just kind of bang around.
We will have a few applications to consider at that meeting as well on the 24th. A few applications, and including another solar project, not of the scale of the big one you saw previously, but
Say along that, shouldn't they have started by now?
Avid Grid, and that they're going through possibly a purchase with Excel Energy, potentially, but right now they're building a lot of the transmission line, going from the old King plant out into the Three Lakes area there by County Road E and Highway 65.
From the town of Baldwin, because on April 1st, there's a meeting of the planning committee, which I'm on, about the solar system they want to put on 12, just coming out of Baldwin, about a mile out of Baldwin. It was interesting, it was extremely interesting. I got that notice, I went inside, and a couple hours later turned the TV on, and they talked about a 3 or 400 acre solar system in Houston, Texas, that was totally destroyed by hail. It was just kind of ironic the way that all happened. But that's gotta go through the town before that comes up to you.
I can talk to you about that offline, yeah. I just got an email on it today, so.
So that one I'll sit out on, I guess.
We are adjourned.